department may be doing that as the contractor notice. The next page is kind of what we added in August. Contractor notice is outlined in the project manual, so the contractors on our projects make notices to residents throughout the project, whether it's a service line. Oh, I didn't see that, sorry. Which one do I hit, Nancy? Okay, thanks. Whether it's, we're gonna be interrupting your water service line for a couple hours or something like that. They may do door hangers, knock on doors, whatever that is, and that's all outlined in the project manual when we go out to bid. During construction, if we have road closures, you can see what happens there, and then any emergency work if something goes awry on the project. Okay. As far as public meetings, we laid out what's required for public meetings. Again, anything affecting a major collector or higher classification will have a public meeting. Any projects that public parking is permanently removed, any new traffic signalization projects, and as required by state and federal statutes, basically all our grant and loan projects require public meetings and notifications. As far as scheduling, we want to make sure it's held prior to the final design, so that during that public meeting, if we have comments that need to go into that design, we have time to do that. And then public advertisements for public meetings shall occur at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting, and always after 5 p.m. and not on weekends. We're trying to make it so that people aren't at work or whatever. The most people can make it. This just kind of is in the policy. We kind of define the notification types and what they are. Letters to owners, when we do these now, we're sending out actual letters through the mail to any property owner within 700-foot radius surrounding that project. And I'll show you in another slide kind of how we do that. And then city website, where we post the notifications there, our social media, media outreach, and then the newspaper. The media outreach, we actually have a internal email link that has all our local media people on it, be it the local newspaper, radio stations, all that stuff, and we can send out to them. And then any legal advertisements or notices we need to do to the newspaper. So this is actually what we used for the 3rd Street and Bill Nye Avenue signal public notification. Basically 700-foot radius, everybody within that 700-foot radius circle, we capture their address and we send them a letter in the mail. For this project, we sent out 105 notifications. Oops, I think I skipped one. Did I skip one? Yeah. So for this year, did I skip 2? No. So for this year, through September 8th, we sent out a total of 1,803 letters to property owners. We have 11 current projects up on our project page. We have 27 items on the draft page for budget for next fiscal year. And then 59 notifications through our city newsflash and Facebook page. I don't know if you've seen the Facebook page lately. I've had comments that it looks like a construction page. Every time we have a road closure, or somebody takes out a permit for a road closure or an emergency closure or a closure during a project, we're throwing it out on Facebook and on the city webpage. This is an actual copy of the notification we sent out to property owners for the 3rd Street Utility Rehabilitation Project, the insert valves. 700-foot radius for that whole project was 693 notifications went out. We threw the dollar amount in for the copies and the postage. And then staff time was about 8 hours. That's a lot of copies, a lot of stuff in envelopes, a lot of addressing that had to occur. This just kind of shows you all the opportunities the public has to see a project before it starts to happen. The items that are underlined are items that were happening before this notification policy went into effect. Most of them are either required by our purchasing policy or state statute. So it starts with the approval of the budget. When you guys approve the budget, those happen in public meetings, and all those projects are listed. After that's approved, the list of projects goes onto the city website. Then when we go out for advertisement for the request for qualifications for design, that advertisement's in the local newspaper. Then we come to you, City Council, in a public meeting just to award that professional services agreement. At 60% design, we send out those notifications to everybody within 700 feet of the project. And that 700 feet was chosen because it basically encapsulates 2 city blocks in every direction. So that's where we came up with the 700 feet. Then the public notices are posted to the news flash and the social media. We have a public meeting when applicable per the policy. Then we advertise for bids. Again, that goes out to the local newspaper. We come back to you to award the contract for that in a public meeting. The public notice is posted again to the news flash and social media of the beginning of construction, and periodic updates during the project occur on newsflash, social media, and the contractor notifications. So this is just kind of an outline of all the opportunities that anybody in the public has to see that this project's coming forward. A lot of opportunities, but I know, people don't always necessarily pay attention to every line item that's in the budget or what have you. And that's what I got on. I did upload to the agenda, or Nancy actually uploaded to the agenda site for me the actual policy. If you want to look at the actual policy here, I just kind of summarized what's in there. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Good.
Let's see.
All right, Harrington.
Councilor Harrington, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Schuster. I just wanted to ask Brooks real quick. I think probably the most recent incident with this and Harrison Street, I think if I were a member of the public who lived on Harrison listening to this presentation, I would wonder why we didn't talk about it. So I think for that reason, if nothing else, we should talk about why that wasn't a noticed project and it wasn't street construction. And if maybe you could just walk through that with us, sort of how events unfolded just for the public.
Sure, Councilor Harrington, through you, Mayor. We knew we were going to talk about it. That's why it's not in the presentation. we had a pretty good feeling it was going to come up. So yeah, I'll tell you, Harrison Street was what we felt was going to be a win-win situation out there. We were doing really the capital project we were doing was on Riverside Avenue, and we saw an opportunity there to use those millings on a street that was close, have them delivered by the contractor instead of them hauling it all the way out to their yard and then us buying them back from them later. We basically had them place them on Harrison Street. We had our crews there ready to go to blade those in place. What happened was we got overwhelmed with the amount of material that came in and the type of material that came in. As you saw, it was really chunky material. We weren't prepared for that, and it caught us off guard. We were hoping to be out of there in a day. The material comes in, we blade it in, we roll it in, we're out. And so that's more of a maintenance project. And usually on the maintenance projects, we don't do a lot of notification on them because a lot of times they're quick hitters. Sometimes we're in and out of there in 10 minutes, and other times they're not even pre-planned, right? We might get a call from someone in the public that says there's a big pothole in the street. The guys run out there, they take care of the pothole. They might have to close down a lane for 15, 20 minutes, but we don't necessarily go through a notification procedure for that because that procedure would take longer than the actual repair. So for what we consider maintenance projects, we're not really doing a whole lot of notifications on those. we do a ton of those every day, whether it's changing a sign, striping a street, fixing a pothole. Again, usually laying down the millings is a quick process. And this one got away from us. And so that's why the residents didn't get immediate notification on it. We did have staff out there every day that was talking to residents in the area. Unfortunately, they took the brunt of it. I was out there for a couple days with the crews, talking to the crews and trying to get things straightened out. And I think the street actually has got a good hard surface on it now and is going to hold up good for the next couple of years. They basically finished everything out today. They were out this morning putting down some mag chloride that'll help tighten it up throughout the winter, and then the additional traffic on there will help. But really, the short answer is we considered it a maintenance project. We thought we were going to be in and out of there before people even got home from work that day.
That's great. Thanks, Brooks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Stalder?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little bit unrelated to the work session, but was there any follow-up with the contractor on Harrison that delivered asphalt basketballs instead of overlay?
Councilor Stoller, through you, Mayor. Yeah, we did talk with the contractor, but it really wasn't their fault. I mean, the real issue was on the asphalt that we were milling on Riverside was in such poor condition that it didn't mill into little pieces. Usually it's hard enough that it mills into little pieces and then we can bring it out and lay it down. In this situation, it was already so crumbled and in such bad condition, when the mill hit it, it was literally pulling out chunks. They didn't know that was gonna happen. We didn't know that was gonna happen. So it wasn't a contractor fault. It was really just a bad situation. And then by the time it hit the ground and those guys started laying it down on the road, I mean, they had 5 trucks running and they were just dumping, and our guys got overwhelmed. We're not going to do that in the future. Our future process, we've talked internally, is that we're either going to have the millings hauled to the landfill where we can store them and grind them later if we need to, or use them later if we need to, or we're just going to have the contractor take them to their yard, which is normally what they do. We try to keep some of them if we can keep them, if we have a place to store them, because really the next year we just end up buying those back from the contractor that hauls them away. So we're looking at some different options in the future. If we have an area where we need them, we'll take them out to the landfill first. We have area to store them there. We'll store them there, and then we can kind of pick and choose what we need out of it. And if it's real chunky, we can always grind it up ourselves.
Thank you. If it's okay, I have questions actually related to the presentation also.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you give me an idea of what the response rate is to all the mailings and stuff? Like, how many people get a hold of you or come to the public meetings when you put out these notices? I don't know how you would measure that, but good, not good.
Yeah, Councilor Stalder, through you, Mayor. With the public meetings, honestly, we usually have 1 or 2 people show up. We actually received more calls this year from people wanting to know why we were notifying them on a project that on a road they never drive down, or they didn't know the name of, or where it was even located. And that, you know, we're doing an alley project where we're putting in a sewer line. We set that out 700-foot radius. That goes 2 blocks away. Those people are like, we don't care. You know, I never go down that alley. So we actually received more calls for that than anything else. But I will say we do receive calls from people on the project wanting to know more about it. Sometimes that occurs during the project. They want to know, you know, hey, when are you guys going to finish up, or what's the schedule or whatever. And during the project, they're usually referred to the contractor because they're the ones that are on the job every day and know that schedule and what's going on. So our contractor helps a lot during the project as a liaison. But yeah, as far as the public meetings, it's usually not a big turnout. It's 1 or 2 people normally.
Is there a way, maybe, sorry,
You had another question. Go ahead, Counselor Stalder.
I do. I have two more. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there a way to maybe customize that a little? I mean, I know it's important to have a policy, but if it's an alley and we're stuffing 800 envelopes, that just seems like kind of wasteful. Where I have heard in public comments lately, people with bigger projects that are like just outside of the radius not getting notified. Is there a way to kind of customize the notifications at all?
Yeah, Counselor Stalder, through you, Mayor. I mean, we can, again, we just put the policy in place this year, so we have the opportunity to revise it anytime. And we'll probably have some more revisions before, next construction season. We talked before in a work session about, on the project for 22nd Reynolds, there was somebody that was just outside the project that didn't get notified. They were 300 feet away. So we moved to 700 feet. Now the people at 750 might not, it goes back to where do we end? And again, we picked the 700 feet because it covers 2 city blocks, and that really made sense to us. Keep in mind when we do these projects on these major roads, that we're also putting it in the newspaper and the city website and everything. They may not necessarily be getting a letter at their house if they live a half mile away or a mile away, but we're doing what we can through our local media and on our own social media and webpage also.
Hey Brooks, this is Eric here. I was gonna add into Counselor Stalder there. The way we have the policy set up is we do have options for customization if we do need it. So like, for example, like when we did Riverside there to the north, that was the main county access. So when we do that notification, we take a look at that 700 feet, but then we try to estimate where it is going to be affected by other people as well. So like with that, we expanded that area quite a bit, actually miles to the north. Because when we were looking at that, we kind of traced routes and everything else and looked and said, well, there's going to be a lot of people that still use this one area for access. We should reach that out. So, we try to do that as much as possible and customize it. The bare minimum is that 700 feet. But, as Brooks kind of noted earlier, you never know. Sometimes there's somebody 25 foot out of there that, and we're looking at a map, we don't think that they're going to be affected, but maybe that is their route to work every morning and they are going to be affected. And so we try to customize it as we do the bare minimums. Like I said, that's 700 feet and try to work with it, but you still, it's hard to do it. And that's when hopefully the other advertisements will reach out to get those people in those areas.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Japp is our city engineer. Thank you for helping with that. Anything else, Counselor Stalder?
Just one other question came to mind, Brooks, while you were speaking. When you're talking about awarding bids, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but is there a percentage of bids that go to Laramie contractors? I don't know if this work session is the right time to ask that question, but it just came to my mind while you were speaking.
Counselor Starr, through you, Mayor. I mean, I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of the projects we have going on this summer. And I think as far as construction projects, Eric may have to help me on this, but I think they all went to local. There was the MOC demolition went to a firm out of Casper. But I think as far as our street projects and our sewer and water projects, they all went to local contractors, if I recall. Is that, you have that off the top of your head, Eric?
Yeah, so Brooks is right with MOC. The only one I can think of directly right now is the Sea Line is a company out of Cheyenne. But with that, they actually do quite a bit of work in Laramie in the past. They have quite a bit of history in Laramie. They just don't have a physical office here. But the majority of our projects are currently being handled through construction of local contractors.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Stalder. Other questions? Counselor Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'd be great to get a follow-up list of that from our public works folks on those contractors. And then I had a quick question tagging on to that because it's of interest. Is the city bound by the 5% contractor preference the way the state of Wyoming's processes are? That's directed to anybody that can answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Counselor Weaver, through you, Mayor, absolutely, state statute is that we give a Wyoming preference. It's not a Laramie preference, it's a Wyoming preference, and I think we had a work session a while back where, I don't want to speak for the city attorney, but if I recall, we couldn't do a Laramie preference, because that would, kind of step on the toes of the state statute. So we do give a 5% in-state, preference.
Yeah, I appreciate the follow-up on that, and it would be good. It would be good to get that information for all of the local contracting business that we've been able to be partners with.
Sure, we can put that together, no problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Weaver. Councilor Schuster.
Yes, I've been on council that long, and yes, we did try to, as a council, to give an additional discount to a local Laramie company, and the state came back and said, you absolutely cannot do that. That the only thing we can do is a Wyoming discount, and we cannot do it with the city, or that would be in violation of some law they have on the books. So, yes, we did try to do that, and we were shot down.
Thank you, Councilor Schuster. Councilor Doherty.
So I appreciate that you did so much in response to public comment, and I think it's admirable. I think alleys, we don't really have to go 700 feet, because really alleys just affect the people that live on the alley. But I really appreciate that you went through this trouble to come up with a more formal policy or a more expanded policy and explain it to us. And so when you say that prior to final design, that still gives a lot of time, right? Because something's designed, then it still has to go through council to get approved before the shovel ready, right?
Right, yeah, Counselor Doherty, through you, Mayor. Absolutely, yeah, and we throw that 60% in there, so we've still got quite a bit of time to get to that final plans. We'll do another review at 90% and then final plans. So we'll have time to make those changes, and then once we get to those finals, and then we go out to bid, and then we still come back to you. So yeah, we used that 60% because we're getting to where, when you look at those plans, you can really see what the project's gonna look like, but it doesn't necessarily have the, the super detail yet. So that's why we picked that 60%. Still gives us plenty of time to make changes based on public comment.
Go ahead, Councilor Doherty.
And I think one of the issues with the project that raised this with the public with us was if new people move in, sit in that period, and I think that's what happened. So I wonder if there's a way that we could just be aware of new residents in the area. I guess when the contractors are handing out things, but I wonder if there's a way with the GIS or with the county assessor or whatever that we could figure out just changes, or that would probably just be a full-time job of watching people move in and out of Laramie. Anyway, I just wonder if that's a possibility.
Councilor Doherty, through you, Mayor, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We'll talk about it internally. I'm not sure how we would track that.
yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, I know what project you're talking about, and there's sometimes a few month time lapse there, and so we can't have residents change out. We hope we will capture them with the contractor before the work starts. But a lot of times that notice from the contractors, maybe just a couple weeks, right? So we'll talk internally and see if there's a way we can handle it. I can't think of something off the top of my head right this second.
I guess we could ask home sellers to let people know, but they might not want to let the buyers know. They found out. All right, thank you.
Is that everything?
Thank you,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyone else with questions for Mr. Brooks? Mr. Webb, I mean. Brooks Webb. All right, any questions or comments from the public?
We have a hand from Brett Glass.
Mr. Glass, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I have just a couple of questions. First of all, I have been occasionally blindsided by projects such as this. And one of the problems with social media, I think it's admirable that city staff is doing this. I think it's a great thing to have city government be transparent as possible. But because social media is so fragmented, I'm wondering if it is possible to get onto an email or SMS list, which would send the notices directly to people who are involved in this, especially if they have utilities at more than one address. Perhaps this could be done through the city utilities. If there's some way of making sure that you're targeted and this doesn't go scroll by in some social media that you don't get a chance to see because it goes by too quickly, or miss it in some other ways. The other question I have is, would it be possible to extend this to things such as requests for street closures, which sometimes happen by surprise, and perhaps changes to the UDC which might affect your zoning?
Okay, 2 questions. Who wants to take that? Mr. Webb.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, as I just went through the presentation, I showed you the social media is one part of the entire process. We understand that everybody's not looking at social media. That's why we do the mailings, we do on the city website, we do the news flashes. Nancy was just reminding me that people can actually go on the city website and sign up so that when we post a news flash, you actually get an email or a text alert that says, hey, here's what's happening. I get those all the time. I don't even remember signing up for them. But anyway, just a reminder, the social media is a small part. We totally understand that everybody doesn't see their social media, everybody doesn't use it, and a lot of people get overwhelmed with it.
Did that answer both your questions, Mr. Glass?
Mr. Mayor, it answered part of it. I think again that's wonderful. I will go and immediately look at signing up on that. But I did want to ask about the second part of my question. See if anyone else can answer it. What about such things as zoning changes? There were a couple just recently that almost flew under the radar. And what about requests for street closures, which are very disruptive, and especially downtown? People need to know about them.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, City Council. The street closures, we also do through the news flashes and social media. And then, if it's part of our capital project, it'll be notification through the contractor for those properties right adjacent to the project. As far as the zoning and the UDC stuff, that's on the planning side, and I don't see any of them on the line.
Just their liaison.
Just the liaison, yeah. So. I wouldn't have the answer for the zoning question.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the public or comments?
Mayor, I'll just take that question back to Todd and Derek and try
All
to
right,
get
thank
response
you.
back to council for you.
Thank
I
you.
know they do some notifications on some of the stuff, but I don't know
Sure.
either, so.
Good. All right, again, anything from the public? Questions, comments? Concerns? Okay, let's go back to the council. Any comments before we go to the next work session item? Councilor Harrington?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to thank Brooks and the Streets Department. I know they got a lot of heat for the Harrison Street thing, as did several of the council members and I'm sure other staff. But I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that they're trying to make some big efforts with small budgets to make the streets a little bit better. And this one went awry. So I wanted to acknowledge that real quick.
Thank you. Councilor Schuster?
Thank you. I want to try to help see if I can answer that question that was asked. If a zoning change is going to happen, we're gonna put out one of our bright red signs 1 month in advance before the meeting that says this property is under evaluation for, and you have to then call in to the planning department, and then the planning department will tell you that sign is there because we're gonna do X, Y, Z, whether it's we're gonna build something there, we're gonna remodel something there, or if there's a zoning change. So we do put out signs in advance by 1 month before the meeting even happens at the planning commission. I don't know if that answers a question or doesn't answer a question, but the red signs are put out, and they're fairly, I don't want to use the word obnoxious, but they're very visible.
Good, I think that helps. Okay, anyone else on council with comments? All right, let's move on to the next work session. Brooks, you're back up again.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, J.R. Slingerland, our solid waste manager, is going to go through the compost slides with you. J.R. is a certified composting manager through the Solid Waste Association in North America, and he is our compost guru.
Mr. Slingerland, welcome. Thank you for your hard work. Go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, council members, as mentioned, my name is J.R. Slingerland, the solid waste manager for the city, and I will be discussing with you expanding the composting program to possibly include food waste. It's a common question, so we'll go over some of the obstacles that may be present, along with some of the positives that might be encountered. So a good starting point is to see how we actually do our current composting, which is biosolids composting. We start with 2 ingredients, basically. We've got it that simplified. We have biosolids from the wastewater treatment plant combined with wood chips, which are the green waste that's brought out to the landfill. So 2 ingredients mixed together into the shape of a windrow. We allow that windrow to get up to temperature. We're looking for 131 degrees or hotter within that windrow. And in that picture, in that lower left-hand corner, you can actually see some steam rising off of there on a cold fall day. So we easily get those temperatures. Somebody gets the fun job of actually going out there and monitoring those temperatures every single day that the landfill is open. We have to prove that that 131 degrees is in that pile in 6 different areas. Multiply that by how many ever windrows we have, which is usually around 8 to 10 windrows. So that gets to be quite the job there. Once those temperatures are stable, we start turning those windrows. We utilize the landfill equipment there along with wastewater treatment plants loaders. Those turnings occur 5 times. That's to allow every part of that windrow to get up to temperature and to get fresh air into there to keep the biological process moving forward. The reason for the 131 degrees is we are dealing with biosolids, so we need to make sure that any pathogens such as E. coli or salmonella are cooked out of those piles, and it would be safe for the public. Once we have done that, we stockpile those windrows. Those sit out there for close to a year. From start to finish, it's close to a year for that compost to cure, for the cooking process to continue on, for the microbes in there to continue breaking down the wood chips, the biosolids, into what we know as compost. In the spring, the wastewater treatment plant will actually come out, take samples from those windrows, make sure the pathogen levels have been reduced, confirm that the heavy metals meet regulatory requirements, and make sure that plants will actually grow in our compost. Those results are available online on the solid waste page if you click on the compost tab. That way residents can look at that, see if that's something they want to try for their application. Once all that testing has been completed, we go ahead and screen that product. What you see in the forefront of that picture in the upper right-hand corner is a screener. In the very center of that is the compost that's been reduced to the very fine material that we all know as compost. And on the right-hand side of that is compost overs. That will actually be reincorporated back into future windrows or used on site at the landfill. So let's discuss some composting benefits. Composting takes green waste out of the landfill. which aids in reducing landfill gas and possibly extends the life of the landfill. It is another form of recycling, and it's kind of a closed loop of recycling. If we think of our single stream, that actually goes down to Denver. That product can be distributed across the nation, possibly it goes to other countries. When we think of compost, people take the compost, they put it on their yard, for example, their grass grows a little taller, a little greener, and that grass, when they cut it, goes back into the green waste, goes back into the composting program. So it's a form of recycling. Our program also assists the wastewater treatment plant with their biosolids. If we did not have our current program, they would have to truck that biosolids to the City Monolith Ranch and apply it on the fields out there. The composting program may help with some methane emissions. There's been some recent research that has found that microorganisms in compost can consume fugitive methane. And our composting pads are on top of old trash, and our compost, some of it, is used on site. I can't give you definitive numbers on that. It is still in the research phase on that, but I just thought that was a pretty neat aspect of composting that we do at a landfill where landfill gas is of a concern. And it also provides our community with locally produced compost. We don't have to truck our stuff in from out of state. It's right here locally. And some of that stuff that comes from out of state, it's made with biosolids also. But depending on the state, they may not have to list biosolids as an ingredient, where we are up front with ours. Further positives of our program are that our recipe never changes. Remember, we've got it down basically to 2 components. Any staff out there can be trained on the basics to keep that program going. It's very simple. We do not have to add any extra water typically. The biosolids contain enough moisture and the ratio has been fine-tuned so that we don't need that additional moisture. It's highly efficient. Equipment and staff time is kept to a minimum out there. So the staff out there is able to perform their landfill duties, and when they have some free time, they can go to the composting program, make the windrow, turn a windrow. Our odors are kept to a minimum because the biosolids have already been through a treatment process at the wastewater treatment plant, so odors are not too much of a concern, and we have minimal vector issues. Our biggest vector issues are in the middle of winter, we have a lot of animals that know those compost rows are warm, so they'll actually dig a little burrow in there to warm themselves up overnight. The amount of biosolids to our green waste, with the green waste averaged out for a few years, actually balanced out. So what does that mean? That means that if we take a typical amount of biosolids per year, typical amount of green waste, we actually would not have enough green waste. We have to average that out over a few years. Recently this year, we had a storm that took down a lot of trees and supplied us with a lot of wood chips. That's occurred in the past. We're able to stockpile that material, and as the biosolids come in, over time that equals out. And if we do run short of green waste, as we've done in the past few years, we go ahead and use the compost overs that we had mentioned earlier. And then our food waste, you can actually integrate that if you use a garbage disposal at your home. If it goes down the drain, goes to the wastewater treatment plant, and gets incorporated into the biosolids, which then get incorporated into the compost program. And it's easy for all of the community to participate in. I'm sure you've heard this many times, but it bears repeating. Every toilet in Laramie is a composting toilet. Now in that picture there, we see some plants growing. That's not compost they're growing in, that's actually biosolids. So biosolids on their own can actually grow plants, but you can't give that to residents, you can't give that to the public. If we were in Colorado, those biosolids could be land applied for commercial farms to grow their vegetables, but we lack that infrastructure, we lack those farms around Laramie. So how do we get biosolids to where it can go to the public? We compost it in our program. Now let's get into food waste a little more in depth. What you see on there is an inverted pyramid from the EPA on how they feel it's most preferable to least preferable to handle food waste. At the very top, of course, source reduction, buy what you will consume. As our parents always told us, clean your plate. The less food waste you have at the beginning, the less food waste you have going through that pyramid. The next best option would be to feed hungry people. And we do have some of those options here in Laramie. There is a soup kitchen. So if you have a lot of food waste, it may be worthwhile to contact them, see what donations are acceptable, and donate some of your extra food. Next up, in the center of the pyramid, we've got limited to no options for those in Laramie. Feeding animals, if you have chickens, you can throw them a few of your food scraps. Industrial uses, if you have cooking oils, there are a couple places in Laramie where you can drop that off for beneficial use, but once again, very limited for those options there. Next, we have composting, which is right above the landfill. What can you do in Laramie currently? You can do the backyard composting or make use of an in-sink disposer, once again, biosolids, and to the composting program. And then last of all is disposal. And in Laramie, that goes to our lined area, so any leachate, anything that comes off of there, is not too much of a concern because we do have a lined containment area with leachate evaporation ponds. So what are some potential food waste composting issues? Well, there's a couple of ways we could try to do food waste composting. On the left-hand side, first of all, we could try to integrate it into the compost program that we currently have with biosolids. We would have limited opportunities for that. It would need to be at windrow creation with a very limited amount of food waste. Why is that? Well, we have to monitor those temperatures, and if we change anything during the monitoring time frame, for example, if we're on our 3rd of 5 turnings and we had the food waste at that time, we're back to square one on that. All those 3 turnings are negated. We're back to zero basically. And we have a limited amount of time due to the moisture that we talked about that is in the biosolids, as we want to make that as efficient as possible. And then a limited amount of food waste. We don't want to change the ratios of those biosolids compost windrows too much. We don't want to get them too out of whack. Otherwise, we may have some issues further down the line. There would need to be extra staff time to evaluate the incoming food waste. Is it wet? Is it dry? Adjusting the ratios to meet that, monitoring and care of those windrows. And so we're probably going to need some dedicated staff and equipment at that point. We may need to have a DEQ permit amendment. That's going to be required, a minor amendment, because we are changing the ways that we do the program out there. We're probably going to have some contamination issues, and I'll get into that a little bit more on the other side of the slide. We may need to have water if the food waste is overly dry. This is not biosolids, it's mixed with biosolids, but you're still going to have some raw food that's rotting out there, that's going through a process, so you may have some odor issues. And then vectors. If you've ever been to the landfill, at certain times you see thousands of seagulls. They're in the trash pit looking for food. They'll dig through trash to find that food, so they will easily dig through wood chips to find food at that point. So what is the other option if we can't really integrate it? Well, we could try a separate program. But we have to be aware that we do not have enough green waste for 2 programs. The biosolids composting would have to be eliminated. And there may not even be enough green waste to compost all of the food waste within Laramie. And then getting food waste to the composting area is going to be another issue. The transportation, the contamination issues involved in that. Do we need to put another cart out there for residents? And by contamination, I mean it can't be the recycling truck that goes and picks that up. You would have cross-contamination. It can't be the garbage truck that would pick it up because that truck has handled garbage, which would be into the food waste and then into the compost rows. So once again, possibly more equipment. And then our DEQ permit, possibly again, the water ratios. And we will definitely need dedicated staff and equipment for an independent program at that point. The odors and vectors would be increased because it is just food waste and wood chips at that point. I keep putting contamination on there because I can't stress that enough. If we think of our single stream program, we have contamination issues in there. When we had green waste drop-off sites around Laramie, we had contamination issues there. Contamination is multiplied, it's amplified in composting programs because you cannot screen it out. If you even leave this little sticker on your piece of fruit, that ends up at the end going through the screen. When we sell that product, you have those little stickers. You have the compostable forks, which actually didn't break down in there. So composting or contamination is a huge issue. And then along with the DEQ permit, we could have possible leachate and groundwater issues. Remember, our composting pads are on top of an old trash area. If the food is overly wet when the truck brings it out there, drops it off, it's like a waterfall going through the wood chips, going through the trash that's there, and that area is not lined at that spot. That's an older part of the landfill. So we may have some issues at that point. So our current options, we'll go over those again. You can use your food disposer. It's an option that's used by a lot of larger cities. You can actually Google incinerator, food waste disposal, and you'll see all these cities mentioned in there. That should be taken with a grain of salt because it is sponsored by Incinerator, which is, of course, is a food disposal company. But the Solid Waste Association of North America, or SWANA, they do see that as a viable option for food waste disposal. You can do backyard composting, which several residents in Laramie already do. And then you can do countertop composting, which is where you have a small container in your apartment for small places. And of course, back to that inverted pyramid, buy what you need, donate, feed animals. And then the last option here in Laramie, place it with your household trash. Once again, it goes to the lined area of the landfill. What are some potential food waste composting benefits? We could possibly see a reduction of landfill gas. Food waste does have less of an issue than biosolids do in terms of image, and it could possibly extend the life of the landfill. So that brings us to the end of the presentation here. I wanted this one last slide so you can see this slope right here. This is behind the Baylor building. We had several issues with this, not actually growing anything, eroding away constantly. So a few years ago, we fixed up the slope, and with nothing but the compost overs, we spread that out on that slope. No seeding was done, and you can see the result. Within a few years, we had some plants growing on there. Granted, there's a lot of weeds in it, but the grass it's taking over quite a bit. Remember, there was no seeding on that. That slope is now stable at the landfill, so it does work out there. With that, I will go ahead and take any questions.
Councilor Schuster.
Thank you. When we talk about food waste, the mayor and I were talking about it before the meeting. You would probably just want like non-chicken bones and bones out of steaks, stuff like that. You'd be looking for old vegetation, lettuce, stuff like that that people didn't finish in a salad. Am I correct on that? Or would you accept basically everything comes off the table, scraped off the plates?
Well, you could do it either way. That's something that would have to be decided later on.
Okay.
If we chose to go that way. There are places that just do the vegetables, as you're saying. There are places that try to incorporate everything into it.
Okay.
There are places where, for example, if we have a wreck on the interstate, some of those places might be ambitious, and if it's a truckload of potato chips, they may find a way to open up every single one of those bags and get it composted, so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Councilor Doherty.
Thank you. I'm always impressed by how scientific you are at the landfill and all the innovations, and I really appreciate it. My question is, it was the students that were approaching us, like the Acres Farm and stuff, about the waste from the cafeterias that they were hoping we could deal with. And I picture all that gooey stuff that people scrape up, the sauces and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like we're not there yet without a major everything would have to change pretty severely. But would industrial like incinerator type things work for like Washakie to be able to send that down the line? I worry about blocking from fats and stuff, worry about blocking in our sewer lines. I know we have issues with that already when people are putting fats plus diaper wipes, making a big mess. So the reason I raised this in the first place, because the students were asking about could the city do something with the university to make sure that stuff is composted. But what I'm hearing is, not without a whole lot of new technology coming along and a lot of money. Is that your assessment? It sounds like it.
Right, we would, so if we were gonna do actual food waste composting at the landfill, we would have to abandon what we're currently doing, a successful program. As far as an industrial food waste composter, they do sell that for dining halls, for grocery stores, for restaurants. As for the fats and stuff, it would be like any other food waste disposer. You get a list of items that can actually be processed into there. Fats and oils are typically not the type of materials that you would put in there. So at that point, somebody at the Washakie Center may have to cut off that fat to process the actual food waste, get it ground down. And then as far as the lines around town, we would have to discuss that with the wastewater guys.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, maybe turning it into biochar might be a better way to get rid of food waste at that scale. I'm just throwing it out there. You don't have to answer. Thank you.
Sure. Council, any other questions? Mr. Slingerland?
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, if I could
Sure, Mr. Webb.
just follow up on Councilor Doherty's question. We met with the folks from Washakie and we met with the student group, and we actually sent them some information on those food waste disposers. I talked with the folks on this collection crew for sewers, and they said basically Washakie, we are washing that line once a month as it is, and they said we would just continue to wash it once a month. And they didn't have a whole big concern with that. But we did send them some information on those food waste disposers. My understanding is they already have a grinder in place, but it grinds and then it just goes into the trash truck where they could grind it, food dispose it, go down the line. And with Washakie, the sewer collection guys didn't have a huge concern because again, they're washing that line once a month anyway.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Schuster?
It's a comment. When we had a grocery store here in town, we had an extremely large grinder in the produce department, and everything went down the line. And it had a very large electric motor, and there was nothing that wouldn't grind up and send down the line. So I understand what they're talking about there, but as in all the other scraps, we in our produce department, trimmings were asked for every night by ranchers to feed livestock, and they came out and got stuff. Game and Fish always came in during watermelon season because they were always having to sometimes remove a certain type of animal from one area, then they would trap him by attracting him with strawberries, watermelon, stuff like that. So we always had a request for every single scrap there was, even if it was the meat department and everything else. Sausage kitchens are always looking for your tallow or beef fat, whatever you want to call it. So there was not much that wasn't recycled in some way or form of another.
Any questions, comments from the public?
I see none, Your Honor.
Okay, Council, anything else you have on this before we go to our final work session topic? All right, I don't see any other questions or comments. Mr. Webb, we're ready for your third work session topic.
All right. Honorable Mayor, City Council, thank you. I would like to add that if anybody wants to go out and see the composting program, shoot JR an email. He gives a fantastic tour. All right, so Nancy's loading us up for the plastic bag discussion. So in January, the city council put out a resolution establishing the intent of the governing body to diminish and regulate retail use plastic bag waste within the city of Laramie. We began working on basically those first two items, looking at a public education campaign to reduce the utilization of plastic bag use. The city manager and staff, which was me and JR, began working with the University School of Business, Management and Marketing in February 2020. The students in that class broke up into 3 groups and began working on marketing campaigns and strategies to assist the city with public education regarding the reduction and recycling of plastic bags. Each group met with us multiple times, at first in person, and then as the COVID pandemic came into play, we did some Zoom meetings. They presented their final presentations to us in early May, and we actually were able to help kind of score them and grade them. It was a lot of fun working with the students. Unfortunately, a lot of the work we were doing got cut short because of the COVID. The students went home, and at the end there, we had students we were working with that were all over the country and sometimes not available and hard to get a hold of. We'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. But anyway, during their presentations, they all groups gave us recommendations for short-term, long-term, and short-term, medium-term, and long-term things that we should do to help reduce plastic bag waste. I kind of combined all of their suggestions in the slides here. So their recommendations for short-term was to create a brand, a logo, and a slogan. That logo on the side was one of the group's logos that they created. Promote reusable bag usage on social media and city webpage. Begin creating and compiling education materials. Create a survey to gain a benchmark. Create trifold for distribution and budget for reusable bags to be stuffed with promotional items and information to be distributed. Their medium-term recommendations were to work with small businesses and retailers to provide options in changing their plastic bag use, distribute flyers and information, hold a contest. One of the groups said hold a contest with the kids to make a design that would be imprinted on reusable bags. Utilize existing local events. One of those events we were talking about big at the time was Freedom Has a Birthday, having a booth and handing out information. As you know, most of those events were canceled this year, unfortunately. And then arrange for city employees to go to school classrooms to do assemblies, presentations, and then purchase reusable bags and print brochures for games. Their long-term recommendation was to hire a marketing and social media intern. They specifically suggested from the School of Business Marketing Department where they were from. Attend local meetings provided by various community groups and provide educational materials. Attend local events. Deliver school presentations, continue using social. Anyway, it was great to work with them. I just want to say that we did get cut short because of the COVID, and I don't think they were able to fully delve into it the way they really wanted to. Most of these items you see here are things that we do anyway for different items. We give presentations at school. We do some local events, not necessarily on plastic bag, but on other items. They also did a survey. The survey, again, was cut short because of the COVID, and they weren't actually able to get as many people captured as they wanted to. But they did survey 18 businesses. I believe they were all in the downtown area. 70% of the business surveyed used plastic bags. half of the businesses surveyed support some type of plastic bag ban. They didn't get into specifics on that. 65% would be willing to provide reusable bags for sale. And the question of why do you use plastic bags was basically the cost, it's cheap, and the ease of use. As far as residents are concerned, they surveyed 25 residents. Keep in mind, most 25 of those was their friends, so students. 5% always use reusable bags, 11% sometimes use reusable bags, 15% say we should eliminate single-use plastic bags completely. 77% say we should greatly reduce the use, and 8% say plastic is not a problem. So effects on the pandemic during this was the survey was cut short. We also ran into some issues where early on in the pandemic, CDC recommended using disposable bags and not reusable bags. There was some fear that the COVID virus could be carried back and forth. They didn't want store clerks handling reusable bags that were being brought in. The CDC has kind of toned back on that now. It's really, just the last couple of weeks I've been doing some research, and it's really been evolving a lot lately. There's been some surveys that say, no, they're fine. You can use the reusable bags again, don't worry about it. So it's quickly evolving. At the time, many stores weren't allowing reusable bags, and many communities and states actually rolled back their current bag bans, including California, San Francisco, New York. California has since reinstated their bag ban, and I believe New York either just did or is planning on reinstating it this month. So now what are we going to do? So one of their recommendations was for a part-time intern to assist with recycling and reuse marketing campaigns. We believe that's a great idea. Our staff at the landfill, with the programs that we've added over the years, we haven't added any staff, but we've added lots of programs and lots of operational changes out there. So not a whole lot of time for our folks out there to be doing and making brochures. That's not their forte anyway. They're, we're equipment operators and things like that. Budget for educational items, including reusable bags, prepare educational flyers, prepare for school assemblies, community group presentations, and complete a survey that reaches a larger group. I think, in my mind, that complete a survey that reaches a larger group is maybe something we should be working on pretty soon. I think we need to get that benchmark now so that we know, we want to find out how many people support a ban, what type of ban, or just a reduction of use, how many people currently use bags. We'd like to get that benchmark set now so that as we roll out a public education campaign near the end of that campaign, we can resurvey and see what type of results that education campaign has had. So for the most part, that's where we're at now. Everything kind of got put on hold because of the COVID and everything that was going on with a lot of stores saying we don't want the bags coming in, and a lot of states and hundreds of communities across the country basically rescinding their bag bans. So we didn't feel like it was a good time to roll out a public education campaign in the midst of that. So that's where we're at now. And I am here to take questions.
All right, ready for questions. Let's start with Councilor Schuster.
Didn't our student council do a commercial from the high school? I believe they did a commercial on recycling and getting rid of plastic bags. I'm pretty sure they did. I know you said the university marketing, but I was sure our student council, we played it here one night even.
Councilor Schuster, through you, Mayor, what are they called? The Youth Council. The Youth Council put together a brief video about recycling, and there was a quick snippet in there about plastic bags and talking about basically they can recycle those at the local markets. Did they pull those out during the COVID, the recycling bins at the stores, JR?
One grocery store.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, one of the local stores pulled those out. Didn't want people bringing those bags back in for recycling, but there was a quick snippet in that video about recycling those bags at your local grocery stores.
Councilor Pierce?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe we may have some baseline data already available. I recall one of our community-wide surveys that the city does every other year that had a question related to plastic bags on it. Not in our most recent survey, but a couple surveys ago. And it would be great if we could be reminded of that question and what the results were on that, from that survey, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, Councilor Pierce, through you, Mayor, I wasn't aware of that, but I will find it.
Okay. Councilor Harrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think maybe piggybacking on Councilor Pierce's comment, it seems to me that even in conversations I've had with constituents that generally use reusable bags and try to not use single use as often as possible, even they have switched to largely single use plastic or paper during the pandemic. So I would be cautious and maybe not too rushed while we're seeing sort of this uptick in cases in Laramie. I'm not sure if we're going to get an accurate baseline, I guess is what I'm trying to say right now, because I think largely the public is going to be additionally cautious to using reusables still.
I agree.
Okay. Councilor Harrington, do you have another?
I had another question if I could, Mr. Mayor. Brooks, when do you expect to start sort of the education component of this? And have you guys picked a sort of, I know you said you got sort of swept up and unable to sort of complete the project with the students, but I'm wondering if you ended up with a selection of sort of a marketing direction, and if yes, when you plan on getting started on that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councilor Harrington, through you, Mayor. We didn't pick just one. We liked certain aspects of all three groups' presentations, and what I showed you tonight in the slides was a compilation of that. So I think we did pick one logo we liked the best, but other than that, there was a lot of information in all the group stuff that we kind of pulled out and put together. As far as rolling that out, again, because of the pandemic, we're kind of on hold. We could probably start putting together some brochures and things like that. But I will tell you that we currently don't. The solid waste budget doesn't have any funding in it for this program right now. And again, our staff are not. That's not our forte. So we would have to probably hire that out, and we don't necessarily have a budget for this program in there yet. Part of your resolution, I believe, was to figure out what that program is going to be, and then come back with a recommendation for next year's budget on what we need to do moving forward.
Thank you, Brooks.
Okay, Councilor Doherty, and then Vice Mayor Gabriel.
I just want, I'm pretty sure that the bags at the grocery stores aren't really getting recycled, that it may be that they're just disposing of them. Do you have any more information about that? I mean, I've read somewhere they're not really recycling them. It makes you feel good so that they're not. I know we don't see that. We don't know.
Yeah, Councilor Doherty, through you, Mayor. JR says we don't see it at the landfill. Our understanding is that the large grocery stores is what they do with their plastic bags, their cardboard. A lot of them bale their own cardboard, those materials. When they have a truck come in to deliver, that stuff gets loaded up and hauled back to their distribution facility, and they consolidate from all the places, and then it does get recycled. But I can't tell you for a fact that that's what happens.
And one more. So I, just today, walking the dog, I picked up 10 bags up around the Sears Sky Park on my path. And I guess it's because it was so windy. Mostly they were Walmart bags, and some of them, when you go to pick them up, they just disintegrate in the sagebrush. But I was thinking maybe we need to educate people about when they throw, like to tie them, because I think it was the wind, like people don't know that you can't put them in the recycling, no matter how many times we tell them, don't put plastic film in the recycling. But I think a lot of it blows out on trash day, because that was today. And so I think if we could educate people more about, like, put a knot in it or something so that it's not so vulnerable to getting caught up by the wind, that would be something to add. Thank you.
Can I make a small comment?
Let's go ahead with you, Councilor Schutz, and then we'll go to Vice Mayor Gabriel.
When we had a store, when we had several stores, we did bag them all up, and our supplier that delivered to us, I won't give out their name, but they did, then on every shipment, when they brought us in pallets of good, they took the recycle bags back to Denver to a sorting facility. So I believe they were recycled, but again, I cannot say, because we did our thing, that they provided us with bags to put in our recycling thing to have people recycle the bags. But again, yes, we sent them back to our supplier that sent us all our groceries, and they said they were recycling them. But did I physically see them do it there in Denver? No, I did not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. Brooks, I was just curious, when we started all this discussion before COVID, I reached out to the acting Public Works Director in Jackson, and he walked me through the process. It was quite lengthy on how they got the process going and kind of the response from the retailers. And he was really helpful about, what you should be doing, and this probably won't work. I was just curious, have you had any conversation with the Jackson people?
Yeah, Councilor Gabriel, through you, Mayor. I had a brief discussion with them a couple months ago. It wasn't the Public Works Director. I can't remember her title, sustainability something. But yeah, they're actually really helpful. And my understanding is that they, during the pandemic, did not rescind their ordinance, and they're carrying on. But their process, when they put the ordinance out, they kind of did a two-step process. The first thing they did was the ordinance rolled out to stores over a certain square footage, the big stores, right? And then they gave, I think it was a 6-month period for the little stores to get ready, right? And then went to the smaller stores. And then I think, if I remember correctly, the smaller retails, the mom and pop folks, that depending on square footage, actually aren't involved in the ordinance at all. Once you get under a certain square foot, they did it by square footage, and they're basically they're charging 20 cents a plastic bag. 10 cents goes to the solid waste. I think it's a district there, and they use that for litter control and promotional campaigns and things. And then the other 10 cents, I believe, goes back to the retailer. They've been helpful, and as we go along, I believe we'll talk with them more. And there's communities all down through Colorado that are also doing programs. Every program I've looked at, every ordinance I've looked at, is a little different. I've seen California. I've followed a little bit, and they've changed their rules and their state law 30 times to try to capture different things. Yeah, Jackson was helpful and will be helpful in the future, and also we'll be reaching out to other communities other than just Jackson, because I think there's a lot of good information out there, a lot of good ideas, and reaching out to those people and seeing what's working, what's not, and trying to find a happy medium for us in the future will be beneficial.
Great, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, council, any other questions for Mr. Webb? Any questions from the public?
Mr. Glass.
Mr. Glass, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Well, this is unfortunately another good example of the city hitting businesses, potentially small local businesses, with new regulations at the worst possible time, right? When we're all dealing with COVID, and afterwards when we're going to be trying to pull out of it and do more economic development, when we're getting less money from the state and other and probably having to raise other taxes and fees. Has there been thought given to, instead of imposing a ban on businesses, finding a way to use a carrot rather than a stick, maybe have them recycle the bags? If you go down to the Big Hollow Food Co-op, you'll see that they encourage people to bring in used bags and then they recycle them. Could we possibly do something like that instead of imposing a regulation that's going to create cost and inconvenience and other problems for local businesses?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glass. Anyone else in the public?
Caleb Hine.
Mr. Hine, go ahead.
Honorable Council, I heard all of the ideas that the student council had come up with, but one of the things that I had heard when researching this, and again, I kind of go with what Brett Glass is also saying, the former guy who's talking, and I'd say that if you use your bags, your plastic bags, 4 times, so you take them back to the store and you double bag, you can cut down on your waste by that much. And so that might be also a good idea. There's just some things that it's not a good time yet to do anything like this. And consumers are they're gonna switch to, worse alternatives like, the paper bag or something else. So I think that right now, during this whole virus, I don't think it's a good idea right now. But you can promote reusing the bags even more than you might the first time, and then after that, take it to where they accept plastic bag donations, and there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Hine. Anyone else in the public?
Mayor, I see no one else unmuting
Okay.
or raising hand.
Council, any final comments? Councilor Schuster?
I would love it if we'd go out and talk to some of these retail businesses. I stated it in the January meeting that at our grocery store, if you brought back your used plastic bags, and just like Mr. Hind was saying, that we gave you a nickel credit off of your grocery purchase for a full bag being reused on a plastic bag. So we might want to just hit some of these things at different angles to see if we can get a person to reuse their bag. And I agree, probably 4 times is going to be the max before that thing's going to tear out. And then in the recycling program that some of the businesses, just like they said, Big Hollow has got a thing there that if they're actually recycling that plastic, fantastic. I would see that film plastic bags should be one of the easiest products to melt back down to give it a new life. Because I've seen the advertising on TV that there's one company that takes reused plastic bags and they're actually making cabinets out of it for to be installed in new houses. There's another company that's making shoes that are being made out of recycled plastic bags, that they are melting them down and we are reusing them. So I think there is probably a slight demand for used plastic bags, seeing that people are advertising this on TV, that I think they're actually doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the council, final comments? Councilor Harrington?
Oh, my 3 minutes are up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the public is largely at a point right now where change in any area seems to be really sort of hard to hang on to. It seems like everything is pretty uncertain. So, I think just to put my opinion out there for staff's benefit, I would be favorable to starting an education component of this as quickly as possible. And again, that's obviously going to come in the budget. So not until the first of the year anyway, but, or mid-year, I suppose, even before we enact. But any sort of ban, of course, I don't think we're not going to see that right now, of course, anyway. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that one in the short term. I think the education component is important, and I think people can start changing behaviors now voluntarily. So I think that's the right idea.
Thank you. Others? All right, I want to thank Mr. Brooks-Webb and also J.R. Slingerland for their presentations to us tonight. This has been great information for us. That completes our work sessions for today. However, we do have council updates, and then we'll later have council comments. Let's start with council updates with Councilor Weaver, and then Harrington, then we'll go on from there. Councilor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Upcoming interviews for replacements to the Monolith Ranch Committee, and would be interested to hear from council members that might want to participate in interviews with me for replacements to that committee. Reach out to me through the council email. That would be it for boards and commissions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, also reaching out to you, but also our city clerk, so that we can coordinate that.
Well, it's actually our administrative assistant in the annex, Mr. Mayor. But yeah, it's always a good idea to reach out to the city clerk so she can help us stay on track and get organized. Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laramie Main Street Association has met many times over the last 3-ish weeks, but largely those have been focused on the design standard revisions. They did host a what was intended to be a listening situation for businesses. Very few businesses showed up, so the efforts will continue. They're switching to a little bit more direct approach as staff time allows. They are really looking at getting more public feedback on those design standards that are aimed back at us on February 2nd. So stay tuned for that. The board has had lengthy conversations on them. They are also in the Laramie Main Street organization is in the midst of their communication audit. They are entering, I think it's phase 2, and that will be how Laramie Main Street communicates with the city itself. So this is sort of a sweeping communication overview that should hopefully solve some of these holes that we've found. And then finally, I think for Laramie Main Street, they do have Small Business Week coming up at the sort of middle of November. So I guess it's probably the 3rd week in November. The typical Small Business Saturday is instead going to be a Small Business Week to hopefully prevent large crowds from gathering anywhere during the pandemic, and to encourage shopping locally, certainly with students leaving at Thanksgiving and not returning. They're hoping to really maximize the Small Business Saturday idea before they all return home. And then the Laramie Public Art Coalition held a sort of like an opening of sorts for a new mural that was just painted on the full pipe installed at the skate park. And the process for selecting artwork that we approved a year ago, I believe, for the Snowy Range Bridge pads on both sides, that project continues on. And they're in the process now. So the submission part is completed.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Yeah, hello, Mayor. I don't have any updates or comments this evening. Thank you.
Councilor Stalder.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have very many updates. I just want to put it out there that the downtown clinic is offering free flu shots for anybody that doesn't have insurance at the soup kitchen on Fridays from 11 to 1, or at the downtown clinic on Thursdays from 5 to 6 p.m. This might be more of a comment now that I'm reading it. And then also at the Interface Commodity Distribution on the 29th.
Okay, Counselor Schuster?
Okay, I don't want to steal anything from you, but sight-in season is going on for 3 more weeks out the rifle range. There's also a meeting tomorrow night. You can double up if you want to on that. Planning Commission is doing a brownfield, our Derek Teeney was talking about on that, and it's coming up. The Planning Commission also, like they set up there, has, I want to say 3 openings. 2 people have reapplied for their position. 1 person has resigned and left. So 2 of them will be for a longer term and 1 of them will be for a shorter term to fulfill that. There are 5 applicants on there. We've already interviewed some of them last week. I think that's all my notices I have, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Doherty?
Commissioner Gosar and I interviewed candidates for the Environmental Advisory Committee. We just have to get some paperwork to you. Of course, we broke ground today for the solar installation at the Ice Center and Rec Center, so that was exciting. And I think that's all my updates. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank Counselor Doherty for speaking at that solar project, and also the Vice Mayor Gabriel and I were present. It was a windy day, but it was a great event. Vice Mayor Gabriel.
Yes, thank you. It was great to be out there at the Ice and Event Center today for the ribbon cutting on the solar panels. Also attended the Labonte Skate Park mural unveiling with Connor Mullen, the artist, on Saturday. Did an outstanding job. Nice attendance, and hats off to Connor. This is his first mural, and he did a really nice job at the skate park. Commend him on that. Working with Brian and Jessica on filling the vacancies with interviews on the Planning Commission. And that is it.
Counselor McKinney? Any comments?
No comments.
Any comments?
No, sir.
Okay, I have a comment, but I'm going to wait till the end and then I'll bring it all back together. Counselor Doherty, comments? Counselor, comments?
I just wanted to comment that an issue that keeps coming back before council, and it's even in people's brochures for running for office, is misinformation that's been brought to our meetings, but then we never can counter it because we don't have an opportunity at meetings to counter disinformation. So I want to talk about the Hollyhock Commons. When we voted on that, we were voting on whether we could repurpose the parking lot, not on the funding. And the public was given the perception that staff is running around making purchases without permission of the council. And I think the public should understand that there's a lot of oversight. Our staff are responsible. They have oversight from their supervisors. We get independent audits, and then you have the financial committee of the city council also overseeing finances. So I just want to correct that misinformation. Unfortunately, we can't do it at meetings, only at work sessions. I would like to change that, where we have a chance to counter misinformation that was presented at a meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we'll work on that. Counselor Schuster?
None at all.
Counselor Stalder? Oh, you said no, I think, or did you? Counselor Stalder, anything? Okay. Counselor Pierce?
Thank you.
No comments. Counselor Harrington? And Counselor Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make. First of all, it is probably my least favorite activity as a member of this council to call order points on members of the public. However, I'm certainly not the first member of the council to do that. I'm sure I won't be the last. I have been a member of council when the mayor has had to do that in the past. It comes up from time to time. And it always presents a situation where people will make the argument that you are trying to silence them. You are perhaps trying to silence one individual or perhaps group of individuals over another group of individuals. That's not really where I'm coming from. The fact is I've just had it. I've had it with disruptive behavior in the chamber. I've had it with personal attacks from members of the public, whether they're members of the Laramie Human Rights Network or any other organization. I don't think we can tolerate it anymore. It needs to be rejected and it needs to be shut down. And I think that you'll find that this is not a unique feeling amongst perhaps all members of the council. So I apologize that we had to endure that tonight. And I apologize for folks having to listen to my tone. But my tolerance and patience for that behavior, regardless of who it comes from or what view they're representing, is at an end. It's text. And it can't be tolerated from anyone. There is a respectful and appropriate way to address members of this chamber or members of the public that come in to speak to us, like the president of the university. And then there's an inappropriate way to do it, and it can't be tolerated. So I apologize to the members of the council and anyone else who might have found that unpleasant. I know I certainly did. That said, I also want to echo this issue of misinformation that the council does not ever have an opportunity to counter. I remember running for city council in 2010 and 2012 and posing an issue myself about the audit of the city finances. And I also went through an education process where, as a member of the council, I was able to learn exactly how the city does keep track of its finances and how it does consult with a third-party firm, and in fact has won awards from agencies that monitor how local governments audit their finances and use third-party sources to verify their practices. And it's unfortunate that we're not able to have more opportunities to provide that information for people. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to make those comments, and members of the council for your patience with, well, me.
Thank you, Councilor Weaver. Now, I wanted to make a comment, but this is asking the council to act quickly on the project that's coming forward. I'm glad all 9 members of the council are here. And here's the project that is underway. And we have an opportunity to have some input. And it's important that we as a council put input into this very quickly if possible, because we're reaching a situation where now, as you know, we share these chambers with the court. And the court is unable to hold jury trials without moving it across the street. Now, my understanding is every day that we have a jury trial across the street, it costs the city $400. And even if we don't have a jury trial, there's reserving the Masonic Temple is $400 a month, and then an additional $400 per trial that goes into the, and that, Malia, is that
No,
inaccurate?
Mayor, just to give you we're holding Masonic because at this point we can't hold it here, but Masonic has a retainer of $400 a month.
Right.
If we get a trial, that will go against the $400 a month.
Okay,
So just, if they don't have it. And CARES Act money will be reimbursed for everything through December for
Okay.
anything that we're using. So we'll get, I put that in the CARES Act to get reimbursed.
Sure, and that's an appropriate place to put that. Now, let me go back to the CARES Act money. We have available to us $30,000 to have a remedy for this, which would have to do with changing the actual, what we have right now as a dais, and change it into a platform which will have more options for not only the court, but also for the city council. Now, as far as the city council is concerned, this would change and be more of a platform. We would have still the option of sitting similar to what we have now, but it would be a platform with the dais removed. Now, it's very it's beneficial to the courts because they can panel a jury here along with the judge and others. But for us, this money is available through the CARES Act for us to do this remodel. And it's something that they are very interested in moving forward on. The proposal is to change this area here to more of a platform, slightly raised, but more of a platform, and we would go out to about the edge of where the dais goes currently, maybe a little bit further to extend it, right. And the thought is we can configure how we sit in many, many ways, because what they would have for us is, instead of having just a seat around a table, we would have workstations, and there would be at least 9 for the council workstations, which we could place at any portion, anywhere we want to here. But personally, I like the idea of being able to look at everybody so that we can, make sure that everyone's being heard and being considered. But we could configure it to where we have 2 rows or 3 rows, or have it in this same type of configuration, whatever we want to do. But I think that it's time for us now to use the CARES Act money to also consider the needs of the court, and for us to come up with any other thoughts that we have very quickly. Now, the reason I say quickly is because in order for us to get this done within the limits that they have for the CARES Act money, we need to probably have all our input in to Todd Fieser or Nancy Bartholomew or Malia Brown by this Thursday. And again, if it's a platform, which it probably will be, and we have our workstations, we can seat ourselves however we want to.
And maintain our 6 feet. That was the biggest thing.
And that's what we're trying to do is, even if we don't maintain a total of 6 feet, we're gonna have barriers. We're gonna have shields to where we're gonna be able to be more protected than we are right now, just sitting around the dais with masks. But we'll have shields in front of us, and we'll be able to conduct our business, in a way in which we see each other. Now, if you have ideas that will be beneficial to this, we need to move quickly, because the contractors, the people that we order the furniture from, need to have this information quickly before we run to the deadlines that have been set to accomplish this. So that's just my comment. Rather than have an open discussion right now, which is probably, this isn't proper for council comments, but contact the individuals that I said within the next few days, so that we can have all the ideas, so as they move forward with this, we can do it properly. And then obviously it's now out to the public, letting them know that the reason we're doing this is because of the COVID pandemic that we're involved in, and also because of the needs for the court and also the council. And again, without having a lot of discussion, I'll take a few comments. Councilor Schuster?
I want to make sure we state that since you and I have talked to them about this already, they feel they can do it in 1 week.
They will.
So we would not have to abandon our chambers and meet somewhere else. We would be able to meet here. Okay?
Good point.
I think that's one thing I really wanted to state.
Good point. Did I miss anything, Malia or Nancy? Okay, just a comment. Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, the only other thing, Mayor, would just be that there would be a fence with a gate in the front.
Yeah.
You know.
So you have 2 exits, one going out the front, and obviously the door. Okay, enough of that. I think we have.
Jane has her hand up.
I'm sorry, Jane Pierce, or Councilor Pierce, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Is there a possibility of being provided via email a schematic of both how that area would be set up for trial, as well as potential options for council meeting?
There is preliminary schematics. Our assistant city manager, Todd Fieser, has that. I'll ask him to send a copy of what he has. Oh, Malia Brown, go ahead.
Mayor, through Jane, basically what this will do is modular, so you can set it up any way you want. So if you have modules, we would have the jury sitting in the 6, and so this furniture allows you to set it up anywhere you want. You don't have to set it up one way. And I think if we got extra, if you had a meeting like with commissioners, you'd have enough space to add more commissioners and stuff. So I think it's not it's not set, you don't have to keep it that way. It actually folds up and will let you store it, so it's furniture that allows you to set it up any way you want. And if you have different work sessions or things like that, you may want to set it up differently. So that's how the furniture is. It's, I think Nancy can send you a picture of it, but I want you to understand, when you see the picture, it doesn't mean it's sitting there. It means it can move any way you want.
And obviously, not all the pictures and options will be available to us
Right.
initially, so that's why we're saying, take a look at what they provide. If you have any further thoughts, communicate that quickly so that we can move forward with this and be able to use the funding that's coming through the CARES Act. Okay. All right. That brings us up to the agenda review. And by the way, this should go very quickly. And if someone wants to take a break, we will, but this, if you look at the agenda, there's not a whole lot for us to go through, but let me do that quickly. First of all, the agenda, if I can grab my copy of it.
You know, Mayor, I forgot to print that for you. If
Okay.
you would like my laptop, I have it pulled up here.
I thought you did.
All right. Okay, you can see it up on the screen.
You can go in and it's in there already.
And I probably can do this from memory, but thank you, City Clerk. First of all, let's just go down. As you can see, there's, from the agenda going down to the consent, the only thing that we really have is the rock star of the month, which is something that we will introduce then. On the consent agenda, there's 3 different resolutions for appointments to different commissions and committees, and that's what we do. If anyone has any concerns about that, they can move it to the regular agenda. On the regular agenda, we have the creating the municipal court for general contracting licensing. Then there's also the and by the way, the general contractors that have met with our staff are very supportive of this. This is something that gives them, you know, a sense that everyone is using professional practices in the contracting that goes on, similar to what we have with electrical and plumbing. And then the original ordinance on the traffic commission. This is, remember we went back and took a look at the traffic commission. This will be presented to us with all of the information that has gone, and will be presented to us by our city attorney. So that basically is that. If there's any questions about the consent or the regular agenda, go ahead and throw those out, and I'll try to find someone that can get you the answer.
People back up.
Yeah, if we can see any questions on this agenda for next week? It's a short one, but who knows? We can extend almost anything. Okay, thank you, City Clerk, for letting me use your laptop. All right, so what we have left now then is on our agenda for today is public comments. And again, the comments I made at the beginning of the first public comment period is we want to make sure that the public follows the guidelines that we have on no personal attacks and also using proper non-offensive language. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment at this time? You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, Mr.
Caleb?
Hine, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank council for going over that, the street, what happened on the street there, and explaining that. We did have a bunch of people who, believe it or not, I even got to talk to you about that. So thank you for explaining that. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Caleb. Anyone else?
Judy, I saw you unmute temporarily. Did you want to make a comment?
She's still unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead. Judy, you're muted again. If you,
Is she?
yeah.
Yes, she is.
Go ahead and unmute and we'll *6. Okay, let's see if we can. Okay, you're unmuted, so go ahead, Judy.
Finally, it didn't show up on my screen.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I really wanted to say, is to thank all of you for your patience and your hard work and dedication. And that's it.
Thank you, Judy. We miss seeing you each week in our council meetings.
Miss you too.
All right, I think that's it then. So this work session is adjourned. Thank you all. Good night.
Hey folks, I'm Steve Butler. This is my garage.